I should say that I'm one of those who foolishly continued to believe the ANC would get a majority. I knew there'd be a decline. In 2024, I could see it. I found the choice of Democratic Alliance worrying, given their stance on many policy issues. But I don't think the ANC had much of a choice, really.
People lobbying for you to be deputy president. Is that something you would have done?
I had agreed.
Do you expect South Africa to face further fight back or retaliation from the States?
We shouldn't take it lightly, because countries that took it lightly suffered horrible consequences.
Welcome back to Palatable Politics, where we make politics palatable. With me, your host, TJ Maslela. Welcome to the show. In today's session, we've got a special guest who has served this country in many ways as an MP, as a minister of multiple portfolios, the last being Durko. She's here to give us insights into her political journey, the G20, political dynamics, Israel and Palestine, what's happening there. And the guest that's giving us insight is none other than Dr. Naledi Pandor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me as well.
Always a pleasure. Could you give us insight as to why politics? I mean, your education was more, I'm saying, linguistics, and your PhD was in education. Where does politics come in?
Well, I was born into a political family. My father was Joe Matthews, and my grandfather was Z.K. Matthews, who's famously known for having mooted the idea of developing a freedom charter and holding a Congress of the People, which he proposed at a conference of the ANC Cape, which was one region at the time, and he was representing the then president of the ANC, who could not be at the conference, and my grandfather was acting president and had served as Cape president of the ANC. So he proposed this idea of a freedom charter, which was accepted with acclamation by the Craddock Eastern Cape Conference. And in 1955, we got
Who was
that
the
freedom
president at the
charter.
time? The ANC president at the time?
Oh, gosh, I'm trying to remember now. I can't remember.
It could have been Lutuli's.
Yeah. It was Lutuli, yes. He was representing Lutuli. That's acting on his behalf. So ZK, very well known within the ANC, and of course Joe Matthews, his son. The two were father and son in the treason trial following the Congress of the People, when all our leaders were arrested by the apartheid state for having dreamt of the notion of human rights and democracy in South Africa. As you know, the treason trial lasted for more than 3 years, and all our leaders were acquitted because no evidence of treason could be proven by the apartheid state. After the release, my dad was one of those who were directed by the organization to go out of the country to help support the underground work, but also to participate in the international solidarity campaign work. So we left as children with our mother in 1960, and essentially grew up as exiles, refugees. Began first in Lesotho, then Zambia, then England eventually for some time. And after England, we moved to Botswana, then from Botswana back to England. So that was the life. And it was not an easy life because of, the constant movement and change. I had said to myself as I grew up, because I couldn't understand, why our family was like this, why we moved every few years and what exactly was going on and why our father was not present and so, So I had come to understand that all of this was associated with something called ANC, and it was politics. And of course, our mother always told us that we are in these countries temporarily, that our country is South Africa. And it's not free at present, but one day it will be free and we will be back home. So we always had that sense that there's something awful happening in the country in which we'd been born, and that there was this thing of we will go back one day. But I told myself I won't participate in politics because it has given rise to this constant temporariness. And I tried to keep away, but I think if something is in your blood or your history, it's very difficult. So I was somewhat of a social activist as a young university student, active in the SRC, particularly on international matters at the time. China was a big issue, Vietnam were big issues, and we would often be in protest on those issues. In Botswana, where I did my first degree. And then I sort of focused on my studies and tried to keep away from trouble, as it were. And then finished my degree. I trained as a teacher and immediately went back to England, where I pursued postgraduate studies. I began teaching in England, and after a few years, I decided to, actually my parents instructed me to come back to Botswana. And so I went back, got a job in Botswana, and I taught there for several years. Then at some point I felt, no man, I want to be in the midst of it, in my country. And so we left Botswana with my husband, came into Bophuthatswana at the time. It was easier for us as people who couldn't access our country to be in this so-called Bantustan. So I got a job in Bophuthatswana in a college of education in a very rural area called Taung, where it was a great pleasure to go back and organize for the ANC, later years. And after Taung, I got a job at the University of Bophuthatswana as a senior lecturer, teaching English, and then got a post at University of Cape Town, where I was very fortunate to be and to participate in the establishment of ANC branches in the Western Cape province. I'd been active, obviously, in the education sector. I was an NECC member in the Western Cape and also in the Education Committee of the ANC in the Western Cape. So I was very into education, activism and education, politics. So, that really led to my being nominated by my province for Parliament when the conferences for electing nominees to Parliament were held.
I assume this was 93, 94.
This would be 93, late 93. And I got a bit of a shock when, I was just an activist doing my work, and the ANC called me late 93 to say, the conferences have nominated you, and you are now on a national list to election to Parliament. So I said, no, I've just got permanent tenure at University of Cape Town, and my career track is an academic one. I was helping out there, but I want to be a professor. And they had Bulelani Nguka, kind of took me aside and had a good word with me about, the organization needs academics as well as others, and you have to, actually take up this because you've done very well supporting activists, building the organization in the Western Cape, and we want you to agree. And then I think they got hold of Sharif, my husband, and through all of them, going on about it, I agreed to serve. It was even quite amusing because I thought I could become an MP and I could continue teaching at the university. And I sort of had persuaded the vice chancellor at the time, and I'll manage it. But of course, I didn't understand. I'd never been in parliament, didn't understand how much work it would be. So in the end, I had to resign, sadly, because it's very difficult to get tenure, which is a permanent position. And I was a senior lecturer. Next would have been assistant professor, and then hopefully, professor. So that's really the role I played. I also, obviously, was a community activist. I believed very strongly in education. So wherever I was, I tried to provide education support to individuals and communities that didn't have this opportunity. So, for example, in Taung, I started a literacy program for helping domestic workers upgrade to matric examination levels if they wish to write. I remember teaching Macbeth as one of the set books 1 year in Taung. And it's very interesting to teach Macbeth under apartheid and link, the strife against apartheid to what was happening in Scotland at that time. So that's really my story. A reluctant politician.
But an amazing one nonetheless. So in your time, I'm saying it was NCOP, education, home affairs, science and technology, and then DERCO, right? What are some of the highlights in these 30 years, would you say?
Well, first, Tapelo, can I call you Tapelo?
Yeah, or TJ, whichever one.
Or TJ. All right, I like TJ. It sounds cool, as my children would say. So first, I served as an MP for 10 years, and I'm really glad that I did. I had no idea about the executive, had very little connection with them, except when they came to address parliamentary committees or when we asked them questions and so on, or meeting ANC ministers in the caucus. But I was an MP for the first 2 decades. And it was only when in the second term, President Mbeki appointed me Minister of Education that I got to know there's this thing, this life of the executive. I'd never even been to Pretoria, except for the inauguration of Mr. Mandela and Mr. Mbeki's first inauguration. So when I got the phone call and I realized I have to spend time in Pretoria, it was a culture shock. I remember trying to look for a late night cafe in Pretoria, not finding one. Because in Cape Town you find them, up till 11. And here we were driving around trying to get milk and we couldn't find a late night store. This place is weird. But now I kind of like the city.
Yeah, Pretoria's a beautiful place.
Yeah. So having served as an MP created a different attitude in my mind about being a minister. First, I respected Parliament and the accountability to Parliament. And the need to really have care with respect to issues of honesty and integrity, because I'd seen what can happen. And that first 10 years helped me a lot, and I think influenced the kind of minister I became. If I hadn't had it, I think I might have had a very different experience of being in the cabinet. I might have made a lot of big mistakes, but the humility of being an MP saved me.
In terms of achievements, are you able to highlight one achievement that made you proud in each of us there?
Oh, there's so many. I've been, very fortunate, and I thank the Almighty for that. Firstly, I was one of the first committee members of the Tertiary Education Fund for South Africa, which was a very small fund, which began with R1 million for supporting poor black students to access higher education. TEFSA existed for several years, from 1990 until around 98, when Kada Asmal passed the legislation to create what is now NSFAS. When NSFAS was created, I cheered because it meant our foundation through TEFSA had resulted in a national institution and a national program, which is now in billions. We started with $1 million in TEFSA. So that's one big thing for me. And in fact, I was unfortunately traveling for the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, so I couldn't attend the sitting for the adoption of NSFAS. But Minister Asmal actually had sent me a note saying, I'd like you to be there because I know what you started through TEFSA with others, of course. Professor Merlin Mel was our chair, Brian Fikaji was a member. At some time, Shivambu was also in TEFSA, and others.
That's not
so,
great.
that's a long
It's
time
not
ago.
that
Yeah. So, we did that initial work of recognizing that if we were to multiply the number of young Black people accessing higher education, we needed a dedicated fund. And that was the inception. So that's one proud moment. Another is, of course, in science and technology, there's so many. The big one is Square Kilometre Array, where we were competing to host the world's largest radio telescope. And we were bidding against New Zealand and Australia. And of course, it was quite competitive, as you might imagine. And I think they thought we didn't have brilliant scientists, which we actually do. Astronomy is one of the most advanced sciences in South Africa. And we gave them a good run and won the bid eventually. So that's one of my proudest moments. And the announcement was made on a date when we were hosting the AU and Diaspora Conference here in Johannesburg. President Zuma was president then. And we knew the announcement was going to happen that day of who had won the bid. And so I had alerted him, don't finish your speech, leave a few lines just in case. I mean, we didn't know what the outcome would be, but asked him to do so. And just before he was to address the plenary, we got the message that South Africa had been granted 2/3, and Australia and New Zealand, who were partnering, were granted 1/3. We had 8 other African countries with us. So we got the 2/3, they got 1/3. So I went and told President Zuma's speechwriter, we've got it. Put it in the speech. So we announced it. So that was a great moment. Then, we established research chairs. This was begun by Minister Mangena, but we expanded the program when I was Minister of Science and Technology. And another one we introduced was to create centers of excellence. I was really keen that Africa does well and exhibits its capacity in science and innovation. But to do that, you've got to invest. If you don't get that talent, to emerge with the full support, because research is very difficult without resourcing. And so the support we had for research chairs and creating centers of excellence in the country was really amazing. Another one is, of course, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma began the process of developing the Smart ID. And I, as her replacement, when she was elected as chair of the African Union Commission, completed the process and introduced the Smart ID to South Africa. So those are some of the wonderful moments. There's so many in education. There were constant reports about the poor literacy levels in South Africa, particularly among adults. From working class communities. So we started this program called Karikude, Let Us Learn. And it was a literacy program modeled on the Cuban alphabetization literacy campaign. We went to Cuba, looked at what they'd done, their materials, spoke to those who initiated the Cuban program, came back home, created a team, and introduced it. So in church halls, garages, community halls, schools, we had adults learning, and we made a big dip and improvement in the literacy levels in South Africa. Finally, Funza Lushaka. We were seeing the numbers of teachers going down, of young people entering the education faculties in South Africa. So we decided to establish a national bursary program for teachers only, for languages, maths, and science. And we introduced Funza Lushaka. I don't know why all our programs are actually in Venda. I'm not sure why. I think our officials in the education department like the sound of the language. So Funza Lushaka has also been quite successful. In fact, I understand that the number of bursaries taken up has been so positive that we've not always been able, through the education department, to absorb all the graduates. But that was a big step for our country.
So
these are some of the experiences.
What did they call that? Being a victim of one's success. Now, I mean, having gone through that journey, and we get the politics of today, how would you describe or explain the state of politics in the country right now?
Well, firstly, I should say that I'm one of those who foolishly continued to believe the ANC would get a majority. I knew there'd be a decline in 2024. I could see it from the polls, but I didn't believe it would be below 51%. So I was naive in that. I think I didn't have a good appreciation of the level of disaffection. And it saddened me that our organization has got to a point where the people are so disaffected that they won't come out to vote. So it's been a hard learning, I hope, for the ANC. And I think we're in an interesting period. I'm constantly wondering whether, from the context of a government of national unity, which was unavoidable given the election outcome, will the ANC be able to distinctively profile itself as a leader of society in an effort to emerge with a majority in the next election? I don't see that emphasis yet, that distinguishing element which says all that is happening, even the success or continued stability of the GNU, is due to political maturity of the ANC. And I had hoped to see that kind of conversation emerging, from within my organization, and I'm not hearing it sufficiently. So I think we continue to complicate political choices for our membership, and I think we need to be more clearly identifying ourselves as distinct from the other parties that are part of a GNU. We should be clear that the GNU is an occurrence of the moment, but there continues to be a need for political organizations that have distinct policies that are different in vision, that have clear goals for the country, which should be articulated in the public domain. So it's a bit of a confusing time.
On that, when ANC decided to go the GNU route, there was a whole lot of chats that the ANC sold out, betrayed, how could they go with the enemy? What's your take on going the DA route and not what was termed a progressive route with MK and EFF?
I found the choice of Democratic Alliance worrying, given their stance on many policy issues. But I don't think the ANC had much of a choice, really. It had to align with parties that I think could be persuaded toward more pragmatic options. And I don't think the others, MK and EFF, are easily persuaded to shift. I'm not certain that they would be. I think that concessions they might demand would be untenable, I suspect. for the ANC. So, they had to go for more middle of the left than, what existed in the other organizations.
And when it came to the decline, what went from 57 to 40% the previous election, and somewhere in that, especially around, was it 2017? Rumors, slates going around that you were asked, or you were going to be asked, or there were people lobbying for you to be deputy president. Is that something you would have done?
I had agreed with the ANC when requested, with the President Ramaphosa, who was then had put himself forward as a candidate and had approached me to make myself available. I had agreed. But over time, I just wasn't totally charmed with some of what I was seeing. And I eventually decided, nah, I declined. I got the numbers because I was asked by the people who do the election thing, the nominations, and I declined on the form.
Is that something, if you're able to go back, is it something you would have changed?
I do regret doing that, actually. I think I should have let the members decide. And many were angry with me because in the queues they told me off when we were queuing up for voting. A number of them said, "We were going to vote for you. How could you do this?" And all of that. So, yeah.
And the whole thing of a woman leader. Personally, I don't think one should be having that discussion of a woman leader. I think it's just pick a leader, and if the leader is a woman, because there are many women. But what's your take on that? Is it a real thing to have the discussion of, are we ready for a woman leader?
Well, I think it's a bit unfair to women. I think it's a bit patronizing. But I do think it's a pity that the ANC has not really made good out of really excellent women that it has in the organization. I cannot understand why Tenjiwe Mtinso didn't become the Secretary General, for example. Or because I thought she was a good Deputy Secretary General. Or why Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma wasn't seen as a potential candidate in 2007, and I think should have been excellent. So, I think women, unfortunately, our membership and some of our women leaders got mired in male politics and really lost the plot with respect to advancing capable candidates.
One of the things with Dr. Dlamini's campaign, there was a lot of the media was aggressive with her, they were rough on her. What role do you think the media plays in politics and how people see and engage and participate in politics?
Well, I think the media has a tendency to be very negative toward women in politics, because I think a lot of those who write on politics have a view that politics is for males, that it's a rough space. And as a woman, because we're defined as gentle, we are mothers and all of this, and so we shouldn't be in the hurly-burly. So the minute you're there, then the assumption is you must be monstrous. And this is how I've been treated, for example, with respect to the issue of Palestine. That I'm some evil person. Not that I respect human rights. So I think there is this tendency to cast aspersions on women because of the notion that power is male. And I think it's a wrong notion. I believe women are far more powerful, even in the social sphere, and also their ability to multitask really sets them apart in very interesting ways. Plus their ability for being very perceptive due to the experiences that women have. But society, and social engineering really does cast women as, emotional, less able. And then the minute you have the ambition to lead, then you're grasping, So we've got to get out of that. And I think be ready if you are going to enter politics at that level. Be ready for everything that will come your way.
And one of the chats is also that Africa as a whole isn't ready for South Africa to have women president because of the role South Africa plays in Africa. But I mean, one has seen how you conducted and how you, in some cases, bullied your way in international relations. Likewise with Dr. Ngozazan. Do you think South Africa would be able to play the role it does, or even a better role, if there was a woman there? Or do you think the reception would have been different?
Well, I think leadership is leadership, and it depends on what policies you take up and positions on both African as well as global issues. And I think given, South Africa's, range of important criteria, economic, social, science, so many, we are a leader, but I find us a very shy leader. And that doesn't, do well for the continent always. I think we should be ready to use our institutions to play a key role. And I'm so glad that we're playing such an important role in the African continental free trade area issues, and that we have a South African as Secretary General, because we do have the capacity to make a difference. We're the most industrialized, with the second largest economy. I believe we are the largest economy, but sometimes they say smaller than Nigeria, I'm not sure. But so many attributes, infrastructure, logistics, public corporates that are so big, ESCOM and so on. All of this makes us stand out. And we, without being arrogant, we should be ready to put them to good use to advance the African continent and the African agenda.
What's your take on the G20?
Well done to South Africa, I think, for the manner in which they've led the G20 this year, and the very astute management of the difficulties with respect to the leadership of the United States of America. I think there was a significant American participation, if not at the highest level of government, but certainly at other structural levels. You had officials here, you had civil society from the United States. So there was participation. And I think, South Africa really managed it very well. But I also don't want us to make too much of G20. It's not like a UN where, treaties and conventions are formulated, adopted, and become international law. The G20 is really a club of economies that are the top 20, or seen as the top 20 in the world. It's going into a bit more, but it really was primarily a financing and development a club to expand participation in discussing the global economy to emerging economies that were outside of the G8 at the time, which became G7. So it is really an important forum for deliberations. I have seen that some of the decisions taken are adopted and acted upon, such as when post-COVID, we were discussing the debt burden beginning to impact on Africa, and important decisions were made at the meeting hosted by France. So it does, make decisions that have an impact. But I think sometimes we overstate its significance in terms of impact on global policy. But really, I admired South Africa and our leadership for the way in which they managed it.
With that said, on UN, how ready and willing is the UN to change the global dynamics and empower the global South, though?
Well, I think they've shown that that they're ready, but they face many, many constraints, and we need to acknowledge this. We know that there's been an ambition to dominate the UN by the United States of America, which is also the biggest funder, and many member states have not sought to match United States funding of UN institutions. So the issue of resources and the overweening influence the United States has through its control of resourcing has been a real problem. Second, the issue of a lack of genuine attachment to the core values of the United Nations and the exercise of double standards, because there's been a power play by the West within the UN system, where rather than the Charter's values being the key drivers, it has often been the interests of the most powerful economies that have led to particular decisions. So the UN has been impacted on severely by the power dynamics, particularly of the West, which are not faithful to the core values of the United Nations.
I assume that's largely why we saw the difference in why Israel was treated the way they were versus Russia.
I think that's part of it. There's a double standard that is often practiced because there's huge concern about Ukraine and Russia's entry into the sovereign territory of Ukraine, but very little concern about the fact that Palestinian legal territory is severely impacted upon by occupation for decades, and in total defiance to resolutions that have been adopted over several decades by the United Nations. I think factors such as Islamophobia, which has been in existence for several years, have really impacted on the world's embrace of the equality, particularly of Muslim people, but Arab people broadly. Africans suffer the same, I think, condition and fate, but Islamophobia has created a permissive environment for abuse of human rights.
And as you said, it's largely been at the interest of the superpowers that be. How far do you think de-dollarizing would go in terms of changing that and bringing equality?
I think it would be an important step of Southern collaboration. But the influence, of the West is so huge that you need a very strong South sentiment. And while I recognize the South as an important political entity, I don't see politics sufficiently in the South. So what I mean is I would be able to define that political presence if I was speaking about the non-aligned movement post-Bandung. It was clear where the sentiment was. It's progressive, it's left, and so on. Today, I'm not so sure that the ideologies are as crisply clear and definable. And that is a concern for me, because I do wonder what is the progressive ideology? Where is it? The Hague Group, which is a group President Ramaphosa played a key role in establishing, along with the President of Colombia, Chile, and so on. It's a group of 30 countries that have committed to the importance of respect for international law. So that's why they call the Hague Group, because the Hague is where much of international law is reflected through the hosting of UN institutions at The Hague. So this group, the Hague Group, has committed, it's about 30 countries, that we will, in our practice, uphold respect for international law. But why should it be 30? It should be all UN member states. And then, of course, the emergence of Progressive International, also very important. But it's in those little groupings that you're seeing the ideals that our leaders, such as Mandela, Sisulu, Luthuli, Tambo, and others, held so strongly onto. We need a world that would go back to those values.
Where do you think it went south? Or, what do you think happened to the position of being firm and this is what we want and this is how we're going to do it? Where did it go?
I think it's related to poor economic progress by developing countries. So the context now for a shift is far better than it has been for many years, because you have a counterweight in China. But again, will Chinese ideology be sufficiently global? Or are the domestic issues so immense that China would rather harness the domestic than take on a global political role? But the opportunities are there. India is huge, Brazil is huge, China is huge. If they could take on this important role of leadership of the South, there might be a prospect. And the fact that they're discussing use of own currencies for trade, not de-dollarization, I think that's a bit of a problematic term. Okay. It's rather, for me, less reliance on the dollar as the key currency for international trade and introducing other mechanisms. This is what I think our leaders have refined as the new approach. So you're seeing greater use of the yuan, for example. You've seen use of the rupee with respect to oil purchases. So it's really looking at a system where it is plausible that own currencies could be utilized. Of course, there's complexity, equivalence of currency, value, and all of that. It's things that we need to sort out. And could we define a universal currency of some kind? These are still philosophical questions, but they're important issues. I know the BRICS central banks and ministers of finance are looking at this. And, we're all waiting with interest to see what emerges.
No, so I do agree with you that using the term de-dollarization is more confrontational, aggressive, versus the other, which is more empowerment, let's empower ourselves. With that said, South Africa's foreign policy, if you go to social media, there's always does South Africa have a social foreign policy? Do we have one? If so, what is it?
Well, we have a white paper that was adopted several years ago, which sets out the foreign policy of South Africa. But we also have a national interest policy document that was adopted by Cabinet in 2023. So it's the most recent framing of South Africa's foreign policy. And our foreign policy is derived from that document I spoke of earlier, which is the Freedom Charter, where when speaking of international relations, the Freedom Charter says all disputes in the world must be resolved through negotiation. And it begins with, there shall be peace and friendship, and then goes on to detail international matters. And this has been the heart of foreign policy for South Africa. We don't seek war with others, and we seek to help people to negotiate when they're in conflict. We try and urge them to avoid armed engagement. This is our foreign policy position. We urge respect for democracy, for freedom, for human rights, because we believe these are important. We attach to them for ourselves and our people, and would like to see them enjoyed by all other people in the world. This is why we strive to support the Palestinian people. We believe in international solidarity, but more than that, we believe every human being deserves to be able to have sovereign status and enjoy basic freedoms and rights.
Do we take the challenges in, whether it's DRC, South Sudan, as serious as we do the ones of, whether it's a Ukraine, Palestine?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. With South Sudan, President Mandela, President Zuma, President Beki, President Ramaphosa have special envoys dedicated to South Sudan. And I myself had been involved in processes with respect to support to South Sudan through the special envoy who's the deputy president of our country, Paul Mashatile. And previous deputy presidents have held that position. So yes, indeed, we've been very, very involved and supportive, because our police, for example, train the police of South Sudan. Our defense force have been helping them to form a unified, out of the different elements that had been in the war, that had, been held in South Sudan, been underway in South Sudan for so many years. And our police and our defense force personnel have been recognized by the UN for the important stabilizing role they have played. So indeed, very significant. DRC, we helped in the era of Joseph Kabila and his father before that to bring stability to that country. The M23 rebels has been a worrying development. We've tried to be of assistance, and of course we've served in the United Nations mission, the peacekeeping mission in the DRC for several years. So we take our African obligations very seriously. We hosted the talks on ending the conflict in Tigray between the federal government of Ethiopia and the Tigray Liberation Organization. We had them here at DERCO for talks. I chaired the initial, and then we had facilitators who were a high-level panel with our former Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo as one of them, and the other facilitator being President Obasanjo, and played an important role in bringing an end to that conflict. So indeed, the African role is taken extremely seriously, and we dedicate resources to it.
And South Africa being this big brother role and champion has somewhat got us into trouble, especially with the USA. But on that, what was the story with your visa?
Oh, it was revoked by the US. I arrived from the United States on a Tuesday morning, and as I landed, you turn on your phone, and I had a letter there, an email saying your visa has been revoked in terms of section whatever of the Immigration Act of the United States of America. That section provides that they don't have to give any reasons. So I have no idea what it's been revoked for, but it says from the moment you departed from the United States, you no longer have permission to enter, and you are, it is permissible or something for you to approach the consulate in your country of residence to apply again and to be interviewed following your renewed application. So, yeah.
Do you expect South Africa to face further fight back or retaliation from the States?
I think it's going to be tense, especially given the very correct position adopted with respect to the handover of the G20, chairpersonship. So I think, the steadfastness of South Africa would not have been a welcome, a position to adopt. But I'm hoping that what will happen is that there'll be a recognition of the fact that these are two countries that are very important, and that having a situation of constant, hostility is not useful. This is our third largest trading partner, and we are the holder of important products for the economy of that country. So I do believe that in the end, business is pragmatic, and that hopefully reason will prevail. If it doesn't, I am urging patience because it's just 3 more years.
Yeah, like
But
2.5.
I
maybe
think
even.
there'll be a rapprochement at some point, because you're not going to be able to hold out that level of hostile engagement for long. But
And
we shouldn't take it lightly, because countries that took it lightly suffered horrible consequences.
and from someone that's participated as deeply in our governance democracy journey and had sight of how other countries on the continent and off have done, what is your hope or expectation for South Africa? Like, what's the potential South Africa has?
I'm at the moment feeling positive because of the numbers we're seeing in the economy. I'm hoping the long-term policies of President Ramaphosa are beginning to gain traction and give us the dividends we'd been hoping for. I'm also very excited about the commitment to infrastructure, because I think that's always a massive contributor to economic progress and growth and job creation, which is our big negative. So the prospects for me in the economy seem good. But what I'd like to see more attention to is really improving the performance of the public service, particularly at local government, and greater investment in efficiency, capacity, and execution at that level. And for me, that can happen if we make better use of our intellectual capacity, our universities. I feel we're not using research to understand what's going on and to help find the solutions to the negative outcomes that we see. So I urge more research, more inquiry. I don't think it's good enough to say we can't treat cancer patients at some hospital. We need to know what's going on. When we're putting so many resources into this area, what's the actual problem? And it is researchers, independent researchers, that will help you to do that.
That answer was also, I see it tapped into a bit of your passion. What other hobbies or things are you passionate about outside of politics?
Well, I like reading. And funnily enough, many people don't know, I like thrillers. So, that those are my favorite. I don't know why, but, really, all the best thrillers, Robert Ludlum, all of them, Grisham, I would take them off the shelf and really enjoy them, Connolly and others. So reading is a huge, huge passion. And then I like cooking. I'm not too bad a cook. My mum, was from Natal. We were born in Durban, and she was a fantastic cook. And I spent a lot of time by her side. So I enjoy cooking.
Favorite dish?
A favorite dish, good biryani, good lamb curry. Um, oh, anything really. So I enjoy cooking. I've stopped cooking a lot now. I think I'm very busy doing other things. I like writing as well. I write all my own speeches. Um, And I like music. I like reggae, soul. Aretha Franklin's one of my favorites. Hugh Masekela. And many people don't know, but get surprised when I say that song Galagata. I liked it a lot, and this da 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 da, so that music of young people, so I love music. I used to like dancing. I now have a bad knee. I don't dance as much, but I would do it at home. Yeah, those are some of the things I enjoy. And of course, family. I love family. I spend a lot of time with family. I don't have a lot of friends, but my family is my everything.
That's something one has consistently heard about you, that your family, you are dedicated mother, wife. So shout outs to that.
Yeah, I learned rugby taking my sons for rugby games on Saturday mornings. And up to today, they make me watch rugby with them. So yes, the mum thing, going to recitals where your daughter drops her recorder or has forgotten the notes for her music, or your child is in a school play and they see you, mommy, and wave from the stage. So family, yeah, absolutely.
Those are priceless moments. But thank you for making time and sharing your insights, knowledge, and experience with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. And it's been interesting. And I know I speak for too long, but it's 30 years and 71 years of age. So,
yeah. Okay. So 40 years, yeah. But thank you very much. Guys, thank you. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. Let us know what... She's given a lot of speeches and has been bullish on a lot of things. Comment and let us know your favorite moments. And once again, thank you very much. Palatable Politics.